I'm very pleased to welcome back to the program, but in a new capacity, Sam Richardson, who's the new executive director of the Jefferson Council, along with contributing editor Jim Bacon, who has appeared with us before in the position of executive director. Sam and Jim, welcome to the Schilling Show. Welcome back, both of you. It's always great to have you with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Hey, Rob.
This is so great. I'm so pleased to have you both here because you're both doing a lot of work for the Jefferson Council. Really has just risen to be one of the top organizations in this area with such important work. So I want, maybe if you would, Sam, to tell us about the Jefferson Council for people who are not familiar with the organization.
Sure. The Jefferson Council is we're UVA Alumni. We're not affiliated. Mm-hmm. We are comprised primarily of UVA alumni as well as students and parents and concerned community members who really want to hold the University of Virginia accountable to be a university and not a social justice experimentation petri dish. We have specifically 4 goals. Mm-hmm. Number 1 is that we want the university to be a place of diversity of intellectual pursuit and open dialogue. That's our primary concern. We also want to hold the university accountable to uphold the honor code and make sure that students and faculty and staff are all working according to the values that Thomas Jefferson instilled in the university when he founded it over 200 years ago. And then that's basically our third premise, is that we want to ensure the Jefferson legacy. And then also we want to maintain the lawn as a UNESCO heritage site. That's something that seems to be a little askewed, but it's not really, because that says something about the historical value of the university, that we as alumni, we know that to be true. But when you're looking from the outside, well, what is just University of Virginia, so what? Well, it's Thomas Jefferson, but it's also something that's recognized around the world by large organizations as an important place of higher learning, something that needs to be preserved.
So this is very interesting to me that you bring these points up. Now, I'm not an alumni of UVA, but my wife has a doctorate from UVA, so we have it in the family. You talk about the honor code. It appears to me that the honor code has essentially been eviscerated over the past few years, very sadly, because that was an outstanding feature of UVA, again, going back to the Jeffersonian principles and people being honorable. It seems like they're doing everything they can to kind of kick the chair out from under the honor code. Are you seeing that?
It is very sad. The events on grounds since October 7th are key evidence of that students and faculty and staff, administration leaders, are not held to standards of honor, such as from the president on down, of enforcing university policy. Faculty who are endorsing counterproductive activity by their students and even endorsing pro-Hamas activities and anti-Jewish, anti-Israel activities, which is not in the spirit of the honor code to allow diverse expression of thought and to hold people accountable when they step over those lines. There's also been, and I would invite Jim to speak to this more, there was an honor code violation charged against an Israeli-American student that was then found to be absurd on its face and was dismissed. But the mere fact that this charge was brought is evidence of the weakening of the standards at the university.
Jim, I'd like to get you in here, and I wanted to let you talk about that, as well as I wanted to talk about the lawn itself and the appearance, which to me has become sewer-like in some ways. I have captured pictures, I know you have, and posted them online of the things that are there. It used to be the people who lived on the lawn considered it a great honor and would act honorably, and now the whole place has been defaced and really kind of a vile place to visit at times. I get the impression that those people hate UVA and everything it stands for.
You're absolutely right, Rob. Sewer-like. I mean, that's a little strong, but the original idea of allowing people to live on the lawn, students live on the lawn one of the key things was they were supposed to act as ambassadors for UVA. They were supposed to be welcoming to visitors and interact with visitors in a positive way and kind of become spokesmen for the university. And presumably, given the fact that they're given this place an honor, they would be a spokesman in a positive way. You don't have to be slavish in your dedication to the university, but certainly positive overall. Well, I mean, this huge change has taken over. I mean, a different kind of person is occupying the lawn. There's a whole thing that we could go into the selection process and how that's changed. And
I think that's important. I think that's very important because people don't understand how this happens, and that these people are not just, this is not a random choice. They're actually being put there on purpose. Would you spend at least a minute or so just telling us about that?
So there is a student selection committee that basically goes through all the applications and makes the decisions. Well, who belongs to that? Who is admitted to that selection committee? Who makes that decision? Well, I mean, there are a variety of criteria and a variety of different kinds of people are selected. But one of the large kind of clusters are all these university student identity group clubs. I mean, like the African American Club and the Asian American Club and the Hispanic Club and the Central American Students Club, whatever. And so all those clubs tend to be dominated by student activists and militants. So they also tend to be very closely aligned and work closely together. And so they are the ones who dominate the picking and the choosing. So they're going to pick and choose people who are like them. And what a surprise when in the course of the year, when people start putting up posters, which they're not supposed to do, except for there's a little bulletin board you're allowed to pull up, according to terms of the lease, you're allowed to put a poster on that bulletin board. But they've been smattering this stuff all over the doors, and the university's not enforcing it. And what's the nature of this thing? A lot of it's pro-Palestinian, and then it's like anti, it's the whole cluster of wokeness, all the woke causes. And they, as a consequence, people show up and take tours of the lawn, and they see all this garbage littering the doors, and it's visually unattractive and incompatible with being a UN World Heritage Site. And not long ago, it kind of got to the point where, you remember one of the things that got this whole thing going for the Jefferson Council, got us launched, was the appearance of the F blank, 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 UVA sign. Well, guess what? Another sign goes up that's saying F UVA. And so it is just absolutely deteriorated, and the administration has failed to enforce it. And it's really disgraceful. And it's not a matter, if it's not a free speech issue. As President Ryan makes clear, there's a time, manner, and place. Everyone at UVA is free to express their views, no matter how reprehensible someone else finds them. But you can't necessarily do it on your door on the lawn. There's lots of other venues where you can go, you can march and protest and wave signs and and do petitions and everything else without any fear of repercussion. But that is a line that should be drawn, and the administration has failed to do so.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me when people hate something enough to call it an F-bomb, and then they want to go there and take advantage of every opportunity. Probably a lot of us are paying for all that. There's probably a lot of people who love UVA and would love to live there, and they're being shut out by the people who hate it. Let's go to the break. We come back on the other side in our final segment. We're talking with Sam Richardson, Jim Bacon from the Jefferson Council, and I want to get into this lawsuit that's been filed recently. We've talked about it on the show, but I want to get Sam and Jim's take on it as well. The Schilling Show continues here. You can send me an email. It's robs@WINA if you have comments or questions for the guests. We'll be back in a moment. All right, Schilling Show into our final segment, continuing with the new executive director of the Jefferson Council, Sam Richardson, and contributing editor Jim Bacon on this very important conversation about what their work is and what's going on at UVA. Sam, you wanted to talk to us about this lawsuit. Would you tell us a little bit about the plaintiff and then get into whatever key points you'd like to make, because it's a very large and deep suit?
Absolutely. And before I get into the nitty-gritty, I'd like to just invite our listeners to go to our website, thejeffersoncouncil.com, where they can actually download the text of the lawsuit that was filed in court 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
So they can read it for themselves and make their own judgments. This suit is being filed with Matan Goldstein as the plaintiff. Matan is an Israeli-American who was a first year, he's a rising second year at UVA. He was one of the very few Jewish students who, after the pro-Hamas protests began, thought quite rightly, given the history of UVA and the things that he had been told by community members, alumni, that yes, you need to go stand up for who you are and what you believe, and you'll be okay. So he did. He went to a rally at the Rotunda, wrapped in an Israeli flag, which is an Israeli way to do things, wearing a kippah on his head, obviously Jewish. And he was abused. He had insults thrown at him. He was spit on. He was, who know, was he hit intentionally or accidentally? We don't know. But he was not treated with any respect. And it was not possible for him to disengage as he wanted to. And so due to his personal experience at the Rotunda, his experience in class, his experience in the hallways, his experience in his dormitory, this suit is being filed on his behalf to point out, start the discussion, and hopefully bring some justice to Matan himself, but also to the university, since the president and the rector literally did nothing in the course of 8 months to try to protect Jewish students, to enforce university policy, to ensure the honor code was adhered to by all parties. We want to hold them accountable to that.
You know, it's remarkable, and it is delineated in the case, which I've read and spent extensive time on, that there's a comparison and contrast to the noose around the Homer statue, which was not directed at a particular individual, but perceived as being directed against a class. And the FBI was involved almost immediately. There was outreach to this community and so forth. And it was 180 degrees almost from how this was handled with the Jewish community, including making parents wait for months and months to get an audience. A very limited number of parents were able to be involved, and really nothing's been done. Did you find that problematic as I do? Because I could hardly believe it.
Unfortunately, it's becoming more and more common. As we have those who are much more closely following Marxism and the hyper-progressive policies that are pitting people against people instead of the principles of the American founders that says we are here together to dialogue and to come to an understanding as a people together. What has been happening is if you are given the label of white or oppressor, then automatically you must be guilty of something. At the same time, if you are not white and you are oppressed, then you must be a victim. So it's not surprising, unfortunately, that this was automatically set up to be that way. Israelis and Jews, not by proxy, but in fact, were set up as the white oppressor with everyone else in the region, which is actually factually not true, given the alliance with Egypt, with Jordan, the Saudis now coming to Israeli assistance. It's not the geopolitical reality that should be expressed, but it's rather the Marxist, racist paradigm that we've come to know to be so common on campuses in the United States. And to that end, those on the Islamofascist side have been able to utilize that in the United States to their own end. One of the things this lawsuit does very well, and again, I want to encourage our listeners to go read the lawsuit, is that it clearly draws the lines from Hamas, from the Muslim Brotherhood, to Faculty for Justice in Palestine, which is an actual organization at UVA and other campuses. I was not aware. I was shocked and appalled, since some of those people used to be my teachers. And from Muslim Brotherhood to Students for Justice in Palestine, which is less surprising because maybe I'm naive, but I have higher expectations of faculty than of students who are maybe 18, 19, 20 years old versus faculty who have been around, who should be intelligent, have read, know their history, but they don't. But this line draws this lawsuit draws those lines very clearly. And then it's also not surprising that after certain announcements were made by these two organizations, after certain statements were made on signs spread all over grounds, that when Jewish parents and Jewish community members, like myself, contacted President Ryan's office, we were given some platitudes. We were told, yes, the president is making plans to meet. And then when are we meeting? When are we meeting? And finally, there was a meeting with very few, and again, platitudes and no actual action taken.
There is a turning point coming up here in a couple of months. And Jim, if you would just tell us, please, about the new Board of Visitors that will be coming on board. I don't know if they've been named. I think they have been, but there's going to be a changing of the guard. I've got about a minute and a half for you.
Yes, Governor Youngkin is supposed to nominate 5 more members of the Board of Visitors, which would bring his number of appointees up to 13 out of a board of 17. That will give his appointees a solid majority. 2.5 years into his administration, he still has, his appointees do not constitute a majority. It's really amazing. There's a real lag time in the way that Virginia set it up. But I think we're going to probably see some fireworks when that happens, because the rector, Robert Hardy, is still a northern holdover. And he works close hand in glove with President Ryan and the secretary of the board, Susan Harris, and they dictate the agenda. They decide what gets talked about, who gets to talk, and the information that's supplied to the board. And I think when the board constitutes its majority, you're going to see that they're going to be a lot more demanding about wanting to see a lot more information and hearing, and they're going to want have a lot greater say than they've had before. So it'll be really interesting.
We'll be watching very carefully, and I want to have both of you back on at that time to talk about where we go from here. I think it's bring hope to a lot of people that we could see some substantial changes. Sam Richardson, Executive Director, Jim Bacon, Contributing Editor at the Jefferson Council. Thank you both for your work and for all the people that work with you. We're so grateful that you came to join us today, and thanks for being on the Schilling Show.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rob.
And that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Schilling Show, but we'll be back here tomorrow to do it all over again.